Hello, everyone. This is Marj Matchee and Kentrina Jenkins, and this is We've Got Your Six. Today with us on this episode, we have Stephen Beardwood, who is a friend and fellow advocate and is a veteran. And I'm going to let Stephen introduce himself to us and tell us what he's been up to. Hi, Stephen, firstly, and can you just tell us a little about yourself?
Okay, so I did 17 years in the military, 7 years as a reservist, 10 years in the regs. Most of my service in the regular force was with the airborne in Petawawa. I did 7 years there, both with the battle group and the regiment itself. I was a medic. Primarily, I was attached to 2 Commando, and I served in Somalia. I was actually on radio duty throughout a lot of the intricacies and developments, shall we say. I have firsthand reactions and difficulties from mefloquine itself. A few years back, about 4 or 5 years ago, I was talking with my brother, and I had known back in '97 that mefloquine had been involved in a lot of my PTSD, quote unquote, and I never realized, however, the extent until about 4 years ago, after we began developing Veterans House. And I should state that I'm a founding board member and the current chair of Veterans House, which is charity, national charity here in Canada. And it wasn't until about 4 or 5 years ago, just after Claude did his hunger strike,
Right.
That I was talking with John Dow, and that's when I started really realizing how deep mefloquine was involved in a lot of my own health problems and issues. I knew it was there back in '97, like I said, but I didn't realize the extent. So at the time, we were working on solutions. We were working on Veterans House even back then. So I was very hesitant to get heavily involved in mefloquine advocacy directly, because I didn't want it to sabotage us getting towards a charity status and being able to do something constructive. So I kind of held back for as long as I could, but then the more I learned, the more vocal I became, and the more pissed off,
Right.
the more I realized how my everyday difficulties, struggling, wasn't even post-traumatic stress. It was outright mefloquine. I don't think I've ever had post-traumatic stress at this point in time. I know that for a lot of guys that they do feel there's a crossover. For me, I don't believe so.
You hit that on the head too. There's a lot of people who have no reason for PTSD in their career, but do suffer PTSD because the symptoms mimic themselves so closely to what mefloquine symptoms are. I just want to throw that in there, but I'll let you carry on.
The real key is, you hit the nail on the head, right? Is I was mentally prepared for war. I trained for 15 years, or not 15 years. I mean, at the time, these 12, 13 years, I've been training, right, extensively. I've dealt with extreme conditions, accidents, even like graphically, one accident that I had to attend, there was a vehicle impact and the brain literally came through the forehead and landed in the back seat. Those things did not cause me post-traumatic stress disorder in the past. Why would they cause me post-traumatic stress disorder? Because I see something in Somalia. You know what I mean? I was too well prepared for that and too well adjusted. And the other key for me was my problems began before we entered the theater. So the minute I took that drug, I stopped sleeping. Right? So I never had the nightmares. I just didn't sleep. Right? So I never thought that the problem was related, because I didn't know, right, that not sleeping was a side effect of the drug as well.
Right. And those took immediately on? When you took that drug, you were one of the first in Somalia, were you not?
Yeah, I was not on the advanced party, but I was first of the main party, so I partied on.
So you were still part of the drug trial?
So the drug trial was, quote, suspended, and I suspect it was suspended in sometime between September of '92 and October of '92.
Yeah, they'd already decided they were going to use it. So it was blatantly just given to you and everyone after.
Well, we do know that in September of '92, they were still putting out for safety studies in documents procuring mefloquine. And in October, they stopped putting forth safety study, and they just ordered 120,000 tablets at around $8 a tablet. No safety study involved there, right? So as to what happened, I have my suspicions, but I think this comes into the advocacy aspect, and I'll use this actually as a segue here. So there are 3 priorities that we really truly need to face as advocates, and if we don't face those 3 priorities, we are shooting ourselves in the foot, right? And so for the guys who have been in combat, who understand the military system, what we are talking about equates to a lone soldier running out onto a battlefield, an open field, right, with his C7 rifle, firing anywhere and anywhere blindly, right? Well, a well-disciplined regiment with support staff comes at him, right? That's been our advocacy in the past, okay? We can't do that anymore and expect to win, because even on a battlefield, we would never expect to win. That would be a suicide run, right?
Right.
What we would do if we were facing a fully tactical regiment and had all the support that it needed, we would form ourselves, even at the platoon level, right, into a very well defended position, right? We would arm ourselves for an offensive capability, and we would fight them on our terms, on our ground, and it would cost them high casualties in order to take our position, if they could take it at all. And history has shown us repeatedly, over and over again, how a small group of guys dug in, right, with the right tools, right, can hold off very large assaults, right, and even have victory. So we need to think our advocacy in those terms. So instead of the lone wolf, I'm out here and I'm giving it my all and screaming at the top of my lungs on how the government has done me wrong, the only response that has been getting for the past 3 decades has been, thank you for your service. We understand you're a mentally ill veteran, right? And so 4 or 5 years ago, after experiencing that repeatedly, I went, we got to change this. I was talking with my brother at the time, and he was saying, there's got to be a better approach, right? That conversation led into what is now Veterans House. Veterans House is a business model, all right? It's adapting our strategies from a battlefield that we understood into one that we don't necessarily understand. Using boardrooms, financial plans, marketing plans, things like what John Dow does in developing political relationships with key members of parliament. Things like what Dave Bona does in reaching out to individual people and bringing them up to speed on how they can improve the basics of their health just by changing their diet. You know what I mean? These things help us to bond together and form a cohesive unit in order to go on to an assault. Because really what we need to do is we need to take the game to them. The game has been in their control for almost 3 decades complete now, right? They control it by narrative. 2 or 3 years ago, my brother and I sat down with Kevin Newman while he was still with CTV. He's retired from CTV now. We did not talk to him so that we can get on the news. We were talking to him about networks and finding strategies and funding so we could develop Veterans House. But in that conversation, Kevin mentioned that CTV was not allowed to do a follow-up on the original W5 program on mefloquine, right?
How high up the ladder did that have to go to happen?
All the way.
Right?
All the way, okay.
That's my point.
Now, interestingly enough, the reason the reason I sat down with Kevin Newman at the time was because I had been talking with Mary Deacon, who put together Bell Media's Let's Talk. And in a cold call conversation to her, she started off listening to me, on what I wanted to accomplish. And a 5-minute opportunity turned into a 30-minute brainstorming session on her part. And when we hung up, she came back with Kevin Newman as a contact and put me in contact with him, right? So it's that kind of networking that's going to get us where we need to go, right? Now, if you think beyond that, the pressure that people like Brandon Kett, once again, John, Dave, John McEachran, the list goes on that these guys and Claude have been doing for the past, decade, right? yourself, yeah, big time. Sorry, Marj, I don't mean to leave you out on that. But yeah, unfortunately, you're not going to name all the individuals involved every time that we speak, right? And so if you take a look at that work, however, did pan off because W5 last year did a follow-up, right? I mean, this was the magic, right? So the key for us, I think, is it goes back 3 years ago to the first mefloquine rally. We had a really good rally with very low numbers, but there were some very key people present speaking. Mm-hmm. The second year,
I worked hard to get them there.
Not to get them there, but the second year they were up there. Plus, we had a bunch of other key advocates show up out of the blue, right? And we all sat at the table and we all talked about how do we combine to form a more cohesive unit. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it really didn't go anyplace because there was no real structure that could actually draw it together. You know what I mean? At that point in time. Then last year's advocacy rally, we're starting to see this cohesive unit starting to come in. We're all talking the same language. We're having the same conversations. We're all on the same page. We're kind of formalizing things. And it's like, okay, now is the time we need to start funding our advocacy. The advocacy to bury the problem onto the airborne regiment, to bury the truth that the drug has neurotoxic side effects, and that it is a neurotoxicant, right? The advocacy to close the Somalia inquiry, and the advocacy to treat and dismiss mefloquinism or quinism as PTSD has been funded by Health Canada, Department of National Defence, Veterans Affairs, and the Government of Canada for 30 decades. If we want to counter that narrative, we must start funding our advocacy in our counter narrative. We cannot do it unless we start soliciting funds, forming committees, outlining a structured plan, cost analysis, market analysis, getting graphic designs done, taking out ads, and starting lobbying not as an individual, but as groups representing tens to thousands of veterans at a time. That is how we're going to fight the next stage of this war, right? So we need to organize, we need to do it. The good news on that is Veterans House was put together with that in mind. So when we went and we got our mission statement submitted into divisions, the Charity Division Canada, they did a phenomenal thing for us. They came back and they said, your scope is too narrow. We want you to broaden your scope so that you can do more. So now anything that we do that advocates mental health, we can actually do and fund. So when we talk about mefloquine advocacy, we have thousands of veterans fighting mefloquine poisoning, right? Quinism. They don't even know that they have it. The small amount that do, we've reached them. We need to reach the guys who don't know, who aren't on Facebook, right? And for that, we need the money. So we need to be able to fund the initiatives to get that word out to them. And that falls directly under that mental health initiative for us. So the good news is, through a mefloquine committee, here's my warning shot for you because I didn't turn my phone off.
It's okay.
So the whole key now is that what we can do is we can have donations made, and this has already happened for the advocacy letter that we put out just 2 days prior to Christmas. I was talking with a veteran. He was saying how he needs some way to identify with his doctor what he's gone through for mefloquine. And I said, we're working on that. And he said, well, how long before it's ready? And I said, as soon as we get some money, we can actually do the letter, right? And that day he sent us a donation, right? Now that still took us a few months, but that letter was done probably within a month. It took us another month to refine it because we had to do all the legal checks and we wanted to check it against the research, all these, cross your T's, dot your I's. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that we had to worry about was making sure that we were insured as a as an entity in order to release that letter. So there was a couple things that had to be done to release it, even though that letter was done within about a 30-day period.
Just for our listeners, that's the letter that Kentrina and I spoke about in our first couple episodes with Dave and Mike Rood, just for an added tool in their toolbox. And we were going to let, you and Lisa, the lady that worked on, the psychologist, hopefully come on and talk about it. So I'm glad you alluded to the letter.
Yeah, so I'm not going to talk about the content of the letter directly. I'm going to let Lisa do that. She wrote the first 5 pages of it. Doc Nevin, it's a chapter of his book. There's a criteria or for a diagnostic evaluation that's in there as well. All those things I think are better suited left to the people who are experts in that area.
We've just said it's a letter that basically says it in layman's terms, in medical and scientific terms, and refers to Dr. Nevin's medical research. So it is available now, and it's hopefully going to just be that ticket for people to go to their doctor with and back them up when they cannot.
Bottom line is you give that letter to your doctor, and if your doctor does not read it, or he reads it and dismisses it, it's his license that's on the line now, because he's been told about criterion H, first and foremost, right, which is being ignored by every medical professional almost without exception, right? Yes. There are exceptions, but I think the vast majority completely ignore it. They're not looking at the criteria for PTSD when they're making their diagnosis. And that comes into the 3 things that we need to do as advocates, which I'll get into in just a minute, but let's finish with the donation that actually got that letter into place, right? The difference was someone committed an action. So this has been my problem with awareness campaigns for numerous years now. Is awareness campaigns are great because they raise awareness. What they don't do is they don't commit actions, right? It's not a committed there's no tool raised out of it. There's no tool you can put in somebody's hands that will commit a change. And the awareness part is necessary because it gets people talking about the problem. Now we need to introduce the tools for the solution. So the first tool we were able to introduce was that letter. And that's actually from the 3rd priority on our list, right? So we still are working on the 1st and 2nd priorities. That's going to take considerably more money, right? The letter was relatively inexpensive to put out in comparison to what it's going to cost to tackle the first 2. So the 3 things that we need to look at as advocates in order. The first is that we force Veterans Affairs, Department of National Defense, and Health Canada to openly recognize the damage that mefloquine does as a neurotoxicant, right? It was Health Canada that forced the black product label to be updated to include psychotic breaks. In June of last year, 2019, in the committee hearings for the Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs, it was Department of National Defense head medical and Veterans Affairs head medical, the Surgeon General and the head medical guy, who admitted on record, although be it accidentally on their part, that it was a neurotoxicant that causes problems, right, including psychotic breaks, right? So they've admitted it, right? They can't just go back on their words, right? What we need now is the money to force them to repeat it openly and to concede that they have been not doing due diligence, right? That's going to take a real good media campaign, and that's going to take money, right? And that's what we need, though, as veterans, as advocates. So the second priority, and this has been repeated once again over and over again, and you've been on this right from the very beginning, from 97, 98, is that we need to reopen the Somalia inquiry.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And the reason we need to do that is because that will expose all the wrongdoings. That will tell us, okay, so why did Dr. Sednor, he was the one, quote, officially doing the safety study, right? Why did he suddenly stop his study? Under what conditions was it stopped? Were the subjects of his study properly notified? Did he have signed consent from them? Were they properly briefed, right? And where's his testimony on all of this? Because I don't recall seeing any of that through the Somalia inquiry.
He was held in one of those standing committees by retired MP John Cummins, who was working with me and Val back then, and they were looking for those signed consent forms for the so-called drug study, and he was literally, where are they? And they were like,
yeah.
They outright said it. It never happened.
So considering this study was in place for a year and a half at least prior to Somalia, right? Yeah. And I mean, there is a list of names of the drugs that were procured for those individuals, because that was done under the, or the permission was granted by Tepper. He signed the agreement, yes. Right? So yeah. There's paperwork on it. So where are the signed consents for those people prior to Somalia, right? So the only way we're going to get those answers is to reopen the Somali inquiry. So priority number 2 is to reopen the Somali inquiry. Again, the media campaign, right? We can't do this through Facebook and Twitter alone, right? We have to get it out. We have to be able to put political pressure on. So we have to be able to connect with the political parties, with the interested MPs. We need to be able to fund for people to go and have those conversations, because we can't keep doing it out of pocket. We need to be able to fund the media campaign and the advertising campaign. And in order for all of that, for us to even do a letter that we could have veterans send to their members of parliament, right? Once again, we have to write that letter, test it, go through a legal process, because we don't want that blowback on us, right? Then we can release it. The same thing, if we want a campaign for letters are being released to Health Canada, same thing, we need to create that letter. That all has to be funded, so we need funding to do that. Each of those letters is going to cost in excess of $1,000, right? And then there's the delivery, right? Getting it out, not just on Facebook, but getting it out to the masses across Canada who aren't connected to the forums, because the Facebook filters out things that you're not interested in. There's much of Canada not getting our posts. So we need to get that out, and once again, that takes money. So the third priority, of course, is going after the PTSD as a diagnosis of convenience, and the letter is going to help with that, but even then, that's not complete. We still need to continue to work on that. So there's 3 top priorities, and as advocates, if we're not addressing each of these 3 priorities every time we speak, or at least one of them each time we speak, right, we're not doing our jobs. We're off on a tangent instead, and that's not in our best interest. I mean, as much as I'd love to believe that mefloquine was designed as part of the MK Ultra experiments, don't buy it. You know what I mean? It's not going to get traction. You know what I mean? It's just not.
No, we all have to stick to the same topics. We have to stick to the same rhetoric. You can't be, you know how hard it is to tell this story, even when you stay on topic. It takes hours to set the premise. It takes forever. We haven't even talked about the drug trial yet. We haven't even, just to try to get, the information out to begin with takes so long to explain it all. You're right. I've been at this 27 years. I met you 3 years ago. And it's because we've all met up that things have exploded. In my world, they have. It was a pretty lonely world for a long time. And I got hurt, but I was easily buried and bullied and whatever, and you know that. But when we spoke about Dave hijacking our Remembrance Day here and meeting me, and then the rally happened. And I know that we say, sometimes you have to give credit where credit's due, because Facebook and that actually did make this, it's hard to ignore social media now, when it was just my little voice. But you're right, we're past that point now too. It has to be more structured, and yes, we need the letters. We absolutely do. I think they're the most critical tool for people who can't, they're just overwhelmed trying to say it, right? Or to get past that one piece of paperwork is too much with the brain damage, right?
So the good news now is we have the template. We have a business platform, right? We have a financial engine that we can use. So people wanting to help fund this, you can give through Veterans House, earmark it as veteran advocacy, or earmark it as veteran mefloquine, brain part there, mefloquine research, right? Yes. So the way it is, and we made this announcement at the last drawing, any money that comes into Veterans House, right, earmarked mefloquine research goes directly to the Queenism Foundation. So up until September of last year, you could give money to the Queenism Foundation, but you would not get a tax receipt. Now, give it to us, it goes 100% to the Queenism Foundation, and you get a tax receipt.
Nice.
Right? So we need to start fundraising for research, and we need to do a campaign, a national campaign, to fund research in Canada, and that will go to the Queenism Foundation directly. Likewise, if we start a capital campaign for mefloquine advocacy, earmark your funds, mefloquine advocacy, and it goes to the advocacy committee for mefloquine, right? And then that will help fund things like the rally. That will help bring in speakers. That will help. Can you imagine if we could bring in Dr. Quinn or a couple of those people?
McCarthy?
You know what I mean?
Right.
Something, because they're already recognized by the media. So now maybe we'll get more extended media coverage. You know what I mean? And so, but in order for that to happen, we got to pay for that, right? So that money has to be available, and we have to be able to. You can also use that money to pay for resources in order to raise more money. You know what I mean? So all of these things, it comes into play. So that, to me, that's the big message is, contact Veterans House. You can go to the website, veteranshouse.ca. There is a PayPal. You can donate there, or there's an address. You can send a check or money order. You know what I mean? So there's different ways to do it. Regretfully, we're not set up yet because we don't have enough operational cash to accept credit cards online, but you can do an e-transfer. That should be available sometime shortly as well. If that did come in, then that would force us to set it up. So I have to talk to our treasurer and make sure that we set that up for the next little while as well. But, I mean, the bottom line is the money that comes in right now goes to where it is being addressed. We are working separately on funding for infrastructure, right? That will come in due time. Right now, everyone is a volunteer, and this is how it's going to continue.
And so just to recap, so you're saying to people, they want to donate to Veterans House, you can earmark just to say it again, just earmark your donation for where you want it to go. If you want it to go to research, put for research. If you want it to go to advocacy, earmark it for advocacy, and it'll get thus, and you will get a tax receipt, correct?
Yeah, and I mean, as a general term, that's not all we're dealing with in Veterans House. We are dealing with all areas of of mental health. So any area of mental health for veterans, that is what we will work on. Right now, our priority has been the mefloquine issue because two of us are mefloquine veterans. Both of us served Somalia, both of us with the airborne. Third member is a family member of mefloquine vet, which is my brother. And then one of our board is a psychiatrist or psychotherapist, which is who wrote that letter and who has many of our brothers and sisters as patients. And she started to see this is not PTSD, and that's why she wrote the letter. This is just how it flows. I mean, we're dealing with. This is our priority because this is what we've survived.
Well, and it's very hard to, you've survived, and it's still hard to get that message out, and it's still hard without hours and hours of explaining how this even began. But that pill started under the guise of a drug trial, and there is so much. I don't even know where to begin with that. The illegalness of it, the wrongness of it, the infringement on your human rights. But now, I mean, again, the military, D&D, Health Canada, and Hoffman and LaRoche had their bulldog, who just passed away a while ago, used to come and shut me down, especially Dr. J. Keystone, and he sung the praises of how good this drug was. And
you have to go higher than Keystone for shutting this down.
I know. But he was the one who used to shut me up all the time, right? But he worked for Hoffman and LaRoche and D&D, and so it was a constant making me, because of Clayton's situation, it just made me look like this wife who was grasping at straws, trying to justify what her husband done. I've never ever in my life done that. I don't justify what happened. What I've been saying forever is it's not PTSD. It's not what you're saying it is. This drug changes your thinking. It changes your abilities. It changes your health. It does everything. And it took a long time for a lot of people to get sick, to realize, yeah, oh my gosh, this is what it is. But the Army was so able to hide it under PTSD for so long, and it became available to the everyday public.
I can justify it, though. I can, because I lost total time, place, reality on multiple occasions where I totally believed something completely contrary to what was happening to me. I was in Canada in November, in a trench system among trees 1 minute, and the next minute I was not there. I was in a desert, right? Completely lost. And all I could think at the time is, I thought I came home. So you think that if I experienced that Clayton was experiencing something contrary? No, that's exactly what he was experiencing. That's exactly what Scott Smith was experiencing when he committed suicide. He wasn't committing suicide. His brain had taken over, and it was not his conscious choice or thoughts.
And that's another message, right, Stephen?
Yeah.
People who've lost loved ones like that, I say it every time, this just
I don't believe it.
Fault.
I don't believe they commit suicide.
No.
I think their brains were broken and totally destroyed from this toxicant. And if you go back again to Keystone blocking you, who was his boss?
Yeah, Hoffman and LaRoche and D&D.
Health Canada.
He was hired by those two.
Okay, who was working in Health Canada?
Also, then he was with all three because he worked for D&D and Hoffman and LaRoche at my time.
You're missing a connection. Colonel Tepper, who signed the safety study, right? Within 5 years of signing of Somalia, was working for Health Canada.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
He had a vested interest and a conflict of interest working for Health Canada, keeping that safety study buried.
Exactly.
So where was he getting his directive from?
That makes sense.
I believe it was from Tepper. Prove me wrong.
I believe it was too. I think we all know that, right? Like when you connect the dots.
So, I mean, if I'm going to blame Hoffman LaRoche for anything, it's bowing to the American war machine to develop the drug when they didn't want to develop it in the first place, because they were hesitant. They didn't want to develop it. They knew it was a neurotoxicant, and they knew it would cause them problems. But there was other contracts they had that were very lucrative, so they looked at the money and said, okay,
yeah,
reality here, right? Yeah. So I'll blame them for that. But
I do, yes.
They clearly stated, do a safety study, right? Because the drug has problems. Hello?
They did, but no one followed up anything, did they? They just kept producing it. They said, they didn't say, gee, I don't see any signed papers here.
Okay, just as a devil advocate, why would they argue with the Canadian government who says, okay, we're ready to buy this drug from the hundreds of thousands? 120,000 pills, the first purchase in mass.
I see that letter.
You know what I mean? You know what the money was on that? Right? And Hoffman LaRoche is going to say, we'd like to see your safety study first. You know, the political pressure that goes on when being deployed, yeah, you do know it, right? Right. So we've got a group that's actively in the process of being deployed. The drug is imminent, it's needed, right? Everyone and their dog is working the safety protocols to get the drug into place so we can deploy, because without it we can't deploy, because this decision was made probably a year in advance.
Yeah.
Right? Because the one thing I do know about the military is nothing happens last minute.
No.
We are not that ready.
They told me at the time that they had acquired the drug outside of Canada. They said to me and the lawyers at the time, they said, this drug, we never even got the drug from Canada. We ended up getting it from Australia, where retired MP John Cummins produced that docket you're talking about, stamped.
Yeah,
NDND,
it was
100,000 units of whatever.
Yeah, LaRoche had a plant, I think, in Oshawa or something like that. That's where it was shipped from. Mississauga, you know what I mean? Toronto area, either way. right? That's
See how big this is? Me and you could go back and forth forever, all the wrongs and the things that are hidden, and that's why we need this. That's why we need people like you. That's why we need Veterans House, you know. It's just another connection, another place for people to go, and you've lived and breathed it. This is not textbook. This is your life and your brother's life.
Well, you know, it's not just my or my brother's life, it's my grandchildren now still being affected today. You know, so this is,
Mine too.
and their children, which will be my great grandchildren, will probably be affected as well. You know, this is a multi-generational, long-term. This is going to have immense impact on the well-being of all families.
Look at the lady next to us. Trina should have never had to go through this with her husband. This should have never, ever made it past Somalia. It should have never been for her husband to be available, or Brandon, or any of the young Afghan vets behind you, and everyone else. It's just.
And Trina has been very quiet because she's got a very hoarse.
She's got her legal.
Yeah, of course. I have like so much to say, and I'm like, I want to like dig right in there, and then I'm like thinking of points. I'm like, okay, well, this about Veterans House, and like, you know, like one of the things that's been like eating at me, and like my voice. Oh my God, I'm sorry, but one of the things that's been eating at me is last year when me and Marj were planning the Veterans mefloquine rally, the factor of money, you know, we hit it, and we hit it, you know, like between ourselves, but it was like money was such an issue, you know. It was like, not only was it, you know, how we were going to travel from like one side of the country to the other, you know, like travel or accommodations, what were we going to eat, like, you know, and then trying to coordinate something. But there was also like, how are we going to pay, you know, how are we going to pay for the piper? How are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? So it's like, you know, so you're going against so many things. And plus you're living in these families, you know, that have like, that have, you know, they're dealing with like the after effects of like mefloquine. So you're dealing with that, you know, which you're constantly hiding anyways, right? And then that comes with its own like money garbage. And then you're dealing with, you know, the costs associated with just like even having the rally, right? Like, let alone making it bigger. So it's like, there was so many times we focused on money when we could have been maybe, you know, had we not been stressing with money, we could have been doing other things, you know, that would have made more of an impact, right?
There's an untapped resource and network out there that we can't access right now either, for the same reason, because this controversy is still in place. So most people may not know this, but 2 years ago, the Legion put $25,000 out to the Kentrina Foundation for a Canadian-based study, right? Well, this based study doesn't really help us. However, I understand why they want to see some kind of Canadian content, right? So that's being done, and it's being done by the Kentrina Foundation. It's a limited study because it's only $25,000, right? But in addition to putting that $25,000 into the mefloquine study, they also put a moratorium on any of the branches getting directly involved with mefloquine advocacy or research or anything like that, because it is so controversial. So, and I get that from an organizational point of view, because as an organizational point of view, you don't want to be in a position where you have to defend yourself in controversy, because you could seriously lose your donations. And this is why 4 years ago, when I first ran across John and I recorded his name, we started talking. I said, well, I'm trying to stay out of it because I'm trying to build this charity, right? But then I began to realize that, you know what, I don't have to stay out of it. It can be the tool to get us where we need to go, right? Because mefloquine poisoning, quinidism, is a mental health issue, no matter how you deal with it. And it's something that can be directly tackled. We don't have to be worried about being shut down dealing with mental health. We have to be worried about being shut down or doing something inappropriate, like not keeping track of funds, not making sure that it's accounted.
Appropriating,
or spending it where it shouldn't be spent, on ridiculous salaries like the Cancer Society, or something like that. We have hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars going to CEOs. We don't need that kind of a problem, right? But
and clarify, you wouldn't be paying an advocate to go. You'd be helping them to get there, right? It's not a paid job. It's reimbursement or get you there. And maybe a veteran who wants to come, who can't because he can't afford it, maybe he can get it, right? Like get help that way. Is that how the funds kind of run?
Exactly. You're not paying for somebody's salary. There are no salaries. Everyone is in volunteer. There are no paid positions in Veterans House, right?
If there were, I'd be rich.
I wish there was at least one paid position so I didn't have to be doing the work I'm doing, all right? I could hire.
That's what I made in 27 years. That would be good.
I need to hire someone to do the administration, all right? I really do. I need someone hired to do the administration. I don't need to pay them ridiculous sum of money, but I need to pay them what they're worth, you know? But the advocates themselves, everyone who works this, are volunteers. This is not to pay them a wage. This is to cover the cost of advocacy. If we're going to put something out, we can't afford to keep paying for it. Mike Rood has gotten some donations to get things done, right? But I mean, he put out money to buy T-shirts, and you know, I grabbed a couple of T-shirts, I put money into it. I don't feel like putting enough money into it. You know what I mean? I need to put more money into that. Well, if I can get donations, then guess what? We can make a donation to something like what Mike Rood is doing because it gets information out, right?
Right.
So those are the good things, but we can't do that if the money isn't coming in, right? And so the other thing, and this is really key, is we're talking right now about individuals making donations. Let's take it a different direction. There are hundreds of veteran-owned businesses, right?
Yeah.
They're all in registries, right? So and there are lots of businesses that are not veteran-owned that would love to support veterans. So these are the kind of relationships that every veteran needs to be talking to. And if you talk to these people, say, hey, you know what? You can really help us fund this fight. If you don't like what happened to me, right? Tell your personal story to them. If they don't like what happened to you, right? Ask them, can you donate as a business, right? It's a registered charity, right? You can check it out online. You can send us an email. You can call us direct, right? And get that business to cut a check.
So this is something we can keep promoting as well too. I know it's just a little YouTube, but I mean, we reach a few people, and we'll keep saying, you know, if you want to help, and this is the perfect opportunity, a safe place to donate. You'll get a tax receipt, and
just earmark it.
It's going directly to helping veterans.
Yep. And make sure you put down what you want it used for.
Yes.
Especially within the mefloquine fight itself, you know, it's twofold. There's the advocacy, and then there's the research, right? The advocacy is going to go after those top three things. It's going to go after the recognition of the damage that mefloquine does. It's going to go after the inquiry into how this drug is, you know, in my opinion, illegally licensed, right? And it's going to go after the diagnosis of convenient PTSD criteria and H, and force things to be looked at properly. Right? That's where the advocacy dollars go. And anything that we can do to bring that about, whether it be the rally, advertising, marketing, talk shows, we should be able to get on talk shows.
Yes.
If you take a look at the sports thing, the Don Cherry over, you know, all that fiasco, they're going to care offensive veterans, right?
Do I like to say you people? Do I need to say that to get attention? No.
No.
I don't mean light of it, but you know. See.
But anybody who's got it in the Sportsnet, right, who can get, you know, someone like, you know, John's in Toronto, get Paul Dow or even Paul Miller onto the show talking, that gives our side a voice nationally in media. So those are the things we need to be working on, right? We need to be networking into a national media program to get someone who knows how to speak in there to speak well, right, and focus on those three things that we need to focus on.
I do know one thing. This is a lot more receptive world than it used to be. When it comes to this, more and more people have someone who suffers from mefloquine. And they may not even be in the Army. It's now Larium in the general public, right? And the light bulb's starting to go on there. It just should never have made it that far, but it has.
There's a big issue, right? So if you reach out and you find those civilians who have been diagnosed with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and all these other things.
PTSD. Funny how that is.
Yeah. And we know that they're mefloquine vets because they've taken the Larium, right? So they're not mefloquine vets, but they're veterans of mefloquine abuse, right? So let's call them. Yeah, they're mefloquine vets as well, right? So we need to reach out to those people because those people have resources. Those people have businesses,
Absolutely.
Those people can help fund the fight as well. But if
And
we
you
don't,
need to know how they've been duped.
if we don't kick this up and start funding it, organizing it, and strategizing it in a new theater of operation, a battlefield we're not really well familiar with, but we're getting to know, right?
Oh,
Which
yes.
boardrooms, the media rooms, and the courthouses and Parliament. That's where we need to take the fight, and we're going to have to raise the funds the same way as the Cancer Society does. We need to use it smarter, though.
We just haven't had much help with media, and you know that. And whether that's way upstairs that keeps the cap on it,
we can buy it.
So be it. Yeah, if you have money, you can buy anything. But like Trina said, I mean, this has just been out of our pockets for years. So it's gonna be nice to have some help. I'm looking forward to it, and I really hope people listening will, just see the seriousness of this and the credibility of Veterans House, that it's a great place to donate. And if you want to do something to create a change, it's a good place to start.
You remember hearing those advertisements for bad iron?
For what?
Bad iron.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that, right?
Yeah. I'm old, though. That's all.
Iron. It was all over the radios and stuff like that. That's what we need.
Yeah.
You have to fund something like that, advertise that this drug on the market, this is the history. So we get a short little 15-second blurb, and we get it out on the radios, we get it out on television. You know what I mean? This is how we fight at the next level, right? And for that, this is where the reach into your pockets, or better yet, reach into someone else's pocket towards a business, right?
I really hope that happens, that somebody out there may not even be suffering, but sees they have the ability, because they have a deep pocket, to help stem some of the suicides that are happening. And this is public now as well as military. It is beyond the scope of anything we can imagine now. So the sooner people realize that this is not going away, it's only getting worse, and the crisis is going, your dollar will help. Just again, Stephen, what is your it's Veteran House.
www.veteranshouse.ca, and that's the website. All the contact information, everything's available through there. Nothing for the letter right now is currently on the website, because we don't have the money to upgrade the website in order to do that type of promotion as of yet. But if you send us an email directly, the info@veteranshouse.ca, once again, the contact information is on the website. So,
and if you need information about Veterans House and you're unable, just contact We Got Your Six. We'll have the Veterans House email on our episode as well, and people will be able to find you. I hope that someone out there is listening, or a lot that are listening, and will be able to help fund such a crucial, critical need.
Yeah, it's time to take the fight to them.
Yeah.
Thank you so
what
much.
I'll do down below in the description, I'll also put like all the information too, and hopefully Stephen will come back. We can chat more like at Veteran House.
Absolutely.
Well, also, because
As you get letters or things like that, or you have new items to share, Stephen, reach out and come on to We Got Your Six, and we'd love to have you back again and share the message.
Well, you guys will be the very first that it goes out to. Guarantee it, each and every time. There actually, there is a survey that we will be putting out very shortly. Once again, that'll go to you guys.
Right.
It's complete. It's ready to go. We just have to, once again, solve a small funding issue. Fortunately, it's a very small one, so we'll be able to solve it very shortly. So.
Absolutely. And even like to kind of like further extend that, if anyone has any suggestions for, things that Veterans House can be working on, right? So like, the letter, absolutely. You can reach out to Veterans House, or Stephen directly. You can also reach out to Marj, because we're also on the committee. So we can, definitely work on that.
Just so people understand, what the way the committee works is the committee is an arm's length entity. It has its own, it sets its own agenda, it sets its own priorities, it operates within a framework, right? It has to be ratified by Veterans House so that it meets the criteria for our charity status, right? But the committee sets its priorities, right? And they will have an operating budget. They have to write that budget, display that budget, all of that stuff will come into place. So everything is totally above board, and you can know who's on that committee. All of this stuff is available to you. So even if you send me something with regards to mefloquine, ultimately it goes to the committee for processing. I'm not doing all that work. You know,
I'll take any work you send my way.
you're getting it all.
I know, right? So yeah, so that's what it. Yeah, so if anyone wants to send work, believe me, you know, it'll get amongst the three of us for sure. So
it will, definitely.
Right on.
Thank you for everything you're doing, Stephen.
Anytime.
Amazing.
thank you.
Thanks again.
I can't wait to talk about it again.
I know. We'll have you back. Thank you, everyone. This is our episode for We Got Your Six, and we look forward to tuning in with you next episode. I never know who our next victim will be. We thank Stephen for being that today, and we look forward to talking to you again. Take care of each other, and thank you.
Thank you, guys.